Hey guys, it's Mana here, and today we are going to go after Erik's ending, because that's the ending that I wanted to begin with, so I'm going to go after that. If there's an ending that you want to see, or if you want me to do all of them, please let me know down in the comments below. Your feedback really helps me out. So, let's get started. You're quite the charmer.
Yes, I am known for that.
As much as I do appreciate the constant compliments, you don't have to keep talking to me like that.
Like what?
He batted his eyelids, as if he had no idea what I was talking about, and I couldn't help but laugh. Well, like you're trying to get in my pants half the time.
I can assure you, I'm just a lover of beautiful women.
Something tells me that there's more to it than that. For a moment he looked away, losing a bit of his smile. Before I could question it, though, he turned back to me with a new teasing smile.
Did you want there to be more?
Yes. I didn't want to hit him, but I didn't know how to react, so I couldn't look at him. He merely chuckled again in my ear.
Sorry. You just look so cute when you're blushing.
I felt my face heat up simply from his words. I then felt Erik take my hand and kiss it gently.
I hope you'll enjoy dinner, however, my dear.
I drew my attention back to the dishes. I was both intrigued and slightly scared by the amount of food they made. Seeing my expression, Erik leaned forward and proudly smiled, gesturing to all the dishes with a dramatic sweep of his arm.
I made almost all of the dishes myself.
Humorously enough, Matthew looked at him with a shocked expression, as if he was betrayed. His face changed instantly to that of a frown.
And I'm the queen of the Nile.
I stayed in the dining room, knowing that the table had to become a buffet table. As I looked around the room carefully, I noted that the floor needed waxing and the table surfaces needed major dusting. Erik came up next to me, lowered a small mop and bucket he had brought in onto the floor, and rolled his sleeves up higher on his arms before looking at me with a raised eyebrow.
Are you sure you want to work with me with cleaning this place up? It'll be a lot of cleaning and tidying. Plus, we have to move the chairs to the corner.
I shook my head, rolling up my sleeves and walking to the table, grabbing hold of a chair. I think I can handle lifting a couple chairs and moving them. Erik smiled at me with a soft chuckle before following my lead. Eventually, we had moved all the chairs to the corner of the room and had begun cleaning the room and the table. Silence consumed the air as we both focused on cleaning. I decided to start mopping the floor, but as I stepped towards the bucket, my foot rolled over a small fluffy object, causing me to slip. Ah! Before I hit the floor, however, I wound up in the arms of Erik, staring up at him in a dance-like dip while gripping onto his shirt. His face held pure concern as he held on and looked down at me.
Are you all right, princess?
All I could do was nod and stare at Erik. He was genuinely concerned. There was no flirtation or smirk on his face. It was cute to see a new side of him. Erik let out a small sigh in relief.
That's a relief. You didn't twist your ankle, did you?
No, I'm fine. Gently, I felt Erik's arm dip under my knees so he could lift me up bridal style. I gripped tighter onto his shirt before he sat me on the table and knelt down to look at my feet. I'm fine, really. Erik didn't speak as he gently looked over my ankles, lightly massaging them to test the pain. I didn't feel any pain. I felt pleasure. I bit my lip as Erik gently massaged his fingers over my skin. I'd had foot massages before, but Erik had amazing skill. Each touch and press sent a wave of pleasure running up my spine. I had to fight to hold back a moan. Erik's face, though, didn't shift to any of mischief or seduction. It remained as concerned as ever. He was full of surprises. Eventually, he finished looking over my feet and smiled in relief. He slowly stood up and smiled his usual smile at me with a small giggle.
You were right, princess. You were fine.
Erik gently lifted me off the table and lowered me onto the floor before placing a swift kiss onto my forehead and continuing his work. I stood there for a moment before slowly walking to the bucket and cleaning as well. My heart continued to pound as we both finished cleaning the room. Did we trip over Simon? I returned to the backyard, hoping to find an incubi still there. Luckily, my gut feeling was right. Erik was beside the gazebo, looking at a small flower that was growing on the railing of it. As I approached, Erik turned his head and smiled his usual smile.
Hello, princess.
Hey, Erik, I got some lunch for you.
Really? You did not have to do that, Princess.
No, it's fine. Here. Erik smiled and took his food, eating a little bit before looking to the flower again. Out of curiosity, I looked at it as well. It was a simple white daisy in full bloom. Erik shook his head and chuckled softly as I joined him in flower gazing.
Sorry, I was simply reminded of home.
Huh? Oh no, you're fine. What about home were you reminded of? Erik looked to the sky with a soft sigh and smiled before looking to the flower again.
The castle, mainly. Despite us not being there anymore, it was still our home. We grew up there our entire lives as brothers. There wasn't a day that went by when we weren't all doing something exciting. It was an empty excitement, of course, but it was still something that bonded us all together.
Sorry, there's something on my screen. Erik slightly trailed off, looking lost in the nostalgia of his thoughts. I didn't know if I wanted to bother him while he remembered something so obviously important to him. Tell me more! Erik turned again to me with a slightly surprised look.
You wish to know more?
Why not? I'm really curious about the place you lived in. Erik nodded before looking to the flower again. After a second, he gained a look of realization before looking to me again.
Would you like me to show you something instead?
I tilted my head in confusion, but nodded nonetheless. What I was expecting could not have prepared me for what I saw. Erik gently brushed his fingers against the petals of the daisy, making it gently quake at his touch. As the daisy abnormally shivered, its petals shifted from white to purple. The yellow center gently faded to a pink hue as the stem began to burn black. I could only stare as Erik plucked the flower from its place and presented it to me.
Watch closely.
I kept my eyes to the flower as Erik began to mutter something. It sounded close to Latin, but I wasn't sure. Regardless, the flower began to glow in Erik's hand. A small crystal-like spores floated up from the pink center and began to form a circle in the air. As the circle closed, the center filled with smoke, forming a screen of some sort. It was misty, so I couldn't see anything. What is this?
Just watch.
I raised an eyebrow, but I followed his instructions. Eventually, the mist faded away, revealing a large throne room. It was all of stone and tile, with the throne itself covered in red fabric and gold metal. Despite it being a mere image in a magic mirror, I felt small looking at the sight of the throne room. Wow, that looks amazing.
That's our castle. It's a wonderful place. Servants and parties galore.
Does your father sit on the throne when he's at the parties?
Very much so. He despises dancing and socializing, so he makes the throne his home.
Do you think he's still there now? I must have struck a small chord with Erik, because he hesitated before responding. Erik smiled only slightly.
We don't know. When we left, we didn't look back. However, we're sure he's still there, since no one followed us out of the Abyssal Plains.
I bit my lip. Maybe I shouldn't have asked. I felt really bad, however. I didn't feel it for long. The magic suddenly stopped and faded away while Erik dropped the daisy. As the daisy turned back to its white and yellow color, Erik dropped to a knee, groaning in pain. Erik, are you alright?
Yes, Princess. I'm fine. I just used too much energy, that's all.
I dropped to a knee to try and examine Erik closer. His face was pale, while his purplish eyes shifted back and forth between purple and gold. His breath was heavy, which concerned me. He used too much energy? That meant he needed more.
Please don't worry, Princess. I'm fine. Don't worry your beautiful head about it.
I felt responsible. I had to help. I quickly grabbed Erik's face and tilted his head to angle with mine. Shifting myself closer, I brought my lips to his and kissed him deeply. I didn't know if this would help, but it was how he got energy before. I shut my eyes, waiting for the draining feeling to reappear in my body. However, Erik grabbed my shoulders and forced me back. I opened my eyes and stared into his frightened golden eyes in surprise. At the same time, I noticed a pink hue run across Erik's face.
Princess? What are you doing?
I don't know why, but I felt both irritated and accomplished at the question, and at the look he was giving me. Where was his flirting? Where was his cocky smirk? From what I remembered, he took advantage of me when we met, yet now he was somehow acting inferior to me. I grabbed his hands and removed them from my shoulders, tangling my fingers with his. I'm trying to help and give you some of my energy. You used your energy to show me that sight, so I want to pay you back for that. Unless you don't want me to help.
Well, I've already taken your energy once before.
That was before. I want to give you energy now. Just let me. All of a sudden, I felt that familiar feeling of warmth run through my body once again. I felt my body slightly heat up as Erik quickly released my hands and wrapped them around my waist, dropping to both knees in front of me. He stared at me with desire in his gaze as he pulled my body to his. Erik leaned his forehead to mine, letting the tips of our noses gently caress each other as he spoke.
You spoiled me.
Before I knew it, I was on top of Erik and he laid on the grass below. I stared wide-eyed as he pulled me into a hot and passionate kiss with a gentle hand on the back of my neck. Erik's other hand rested on the small of my back, while I rested my hands on his chest. I moved myself to straddle his hips to be more comfortable in the kiss. The energy from my body was slowly draining, making me feel light and warm. It was almost pitiful how comfortable and how willing I was in this situation. Still, I held no regrets. I was enjoying every bit of this kiss. While Erik held me, he gently rolled us both over so he was on top of me, kissing me hotly and holding me tightly. I was tempted to wrap my legs around him, but I remained focused on the kiss. It was better that I was on the bottom anyway, with my energy slowly fading from my body. However, the draining feeling suddenly stopped as Erik pulled away and looked down at me. I stared up at him as we both panted for air. I had never kissed like that before, and I was so lost in the moment that I had forgotten how to breathe. Erik, however, didn't move from me, but moved a strand of hair from my face, eyes still full of desire.
I'm completely full, and yet I still desire you.
I could feel the hold of his mind-altering spell fade away, but I still felt hot. Something told me that I wanted more, but at the same time, I wasn't sure I truly did want to give any more. Let's keep going. I opened the opportunity, and I was enjoying it as much as he was. I wanted more, and I was going to let him keep going. I wanted to keep going. I reached up, pulled him down, and kissed him, giving him silent approval to keep going. I could feel him pull on the tail of my bow, releasing it and following his hand off from around my neck. He moved the ribbon to the ground beside me before gently unbuttoning the top buttons of my blouse, stopping at the buttons above my stomach. The desire in my body drove me insane, forcing a moan to escape my lips as he ran kisses from my lips to my exposed neck. As he began to ravish my neck and shoulder in hot kisses, I leaned my head back against the grass and let a pleasureful sigh escape my lips. Erik was ruthless in his passionate kisses on my skin. Erik didn't stop touching and kissing me, making more moans and gasps rush out of my mouth into the open air. He was full, but he was as hot as I was. I couldn't even comprehend how much time we spent making out. I was so lost in pleasure that I didn't care. Call it sinful, but I didn't care. I loved it. His touch, his kiss, his heat. I desired it beyond anything at that moment, even as he lowered his kisses down my chest and just above my bra. My heart was beating wildly in my chest. Something about Erik intrigued me immensely, but something made my heart quicken for him. It couldn't have been love, but it was too passionate to be lust. What was it? However, I began to feel dizzy, seeing the sky start to spin almost wildly. I gripped onto Erik's shoulders, trying to signal him to stop, but my mind faded to black before I could let out another sound. Whoops! Felt good. I didn't care that I was blacked out. I felt warm and fuzzy in the darkness. I never knew indulging in that kind of passion would be that good. Now I just wanted to awaken, hopefully in a good way. My eyes eventually fluttered open, adjusting to the sight around me. I felt familiar silks underneath me, letting me know that I was in my bed. I slowly sat up, stretching from tiredness that still lingered. I felt a very soft pain in my neck and shoulders, and I could feel my swollen lips pulse gently in healing. However, when I looked down at my body, I saw that my shirt had been pulled back up and rebuttoned, as if nothing had happened between me and Erik. I was just missing my ribbon. Before I turned to get out of bed, though, I spotted my ribbon on the pillow beside the one I slept on. It was tied in a nice bow around the daisy Erik had picked, with a small note attached to it. I gently slipped the note from the tie and opened it to read.
You've spoiled me, my princess. I am eternally grateful that you let me indulge like that. Have a good rest.
Tee hee. I looked to the time again. Time to go. I quickly rushed to the doors, checking myself in the passing mirror. I wasn't wanting to impress anyone, but I still needed to look decent. Before I could reach the handle of the door, however, someone took my hand. Huh? I turned to see Erik, who was holding my hand back with a concerned frown on his face.
My name.
Your name?
My true name isn't Erik, miss. I want you to know my real name. If something were to happen.
Oh? His true name? What did he mean? Why was he telling me this now? Erik gently pulled me to him and leaned close to whisper in my ear.
My name is Uzeris.
Uzeris. It's definitely a lot different from Erik. As he said his name, I could feel it lock into my memory. Something in my head would make sure I would never forget it. Erik pulled away and smiled at me, despite still carrying worry in his eyes.
If you are in any danger, call my name. I promise that I'll come and help you.
I stared up at Erik, unable to say anything. I could only nod in response. Erik smiled before kissing my hand and heading into the dining room. Something told me that name would be used eventually. And right on cue, Naomi drove up to the gates and Suzu waving me down. I rushed out the door and we headed to school, talking about the homework and the coming day. Uzeris! All of a sudden, a bright purple light engulfed the room, causing the devils around me to cover themselves.
What the?
Gusts of wind rushed past me, almost forcing me back. I covered my face with my arms, bracing myself and standing my ground. I tried to peek through my arms to see what was going on, but the light continued to shine brightly. As the gusts slowly started to die, the light began to fade, revealing Erik. Erik!
Did you miss me?
Yes. However, the seductive smile that graced his lips quickly disappeared as he turned to Malix. As Malix lowered his arms, Erik glared.
You really are evil at its core. Kidnapping an innocent woman like you did. It's disgusting how we demons are confused for your kind.
Look at this little man whore Erik right here, boys. Might as well sleep with a disease.
The devils around them laughed, including Eris. I felt a twinge of anger, but Erik must have taken it from me and added it to his own. Erik flicked his wrist and arm across his body, producing a small whipping noise through the air. However, Malix hissed and reached for his cheek, as if the air had slapped him hard. What the? When Malix removed his hand from his cheek, I stared wide-eyed at the large slash that was revealed on it. A mixture of red and black blood gently dripped from the wound, causing Malix to growl angrily at Erik.
So, pretty boy thinks he has balls, huh? Time to make this pretty boy dead bitch.
This got interesting. All of a sudden, Malix lifted his gun towards Erik and pulled the trigger. I gasped and tensed up, not believing what I was seeing. As I braced myself for Malix's bullet to embed itself into Erik, however, a large ethereal tendril shot up in front of Eric's body, sprouting from the ground by his feet. Quickly, after the bullet evaporated into the tendril, several others appeared, forming a dark purple crown around Eric's body.
What the? What is that?
Did you expect me to come unprepared the second time around? Thanks to my lovely princess, I can now use the full extent of my powers. Unfortunately for you, that means I'm afraid you will lose this fight.
You cocky little shit!
Malix charged up his energy and began to fire bullet after bullet at Erik in anger. However, the tendrils danced across Erik's body with ease, blocking each one as if they were mere pebbles to a wall. The remaining devils stared, trying to figure out what to do, help Malix or watch in silence. Eris, however, walked up beside me and crossed her arms as she watched with an amused smirk on her face.
Die already!
Erik chuckled before snapping his fingers, causing a row of tendrils to appear behind him, pointing their sharp ends at Malix, who continued to fire bullets at the incubus. The tendrils uprooted themselves and floated into the air, straightening out to large spikes before quickly splintering into multiple thinner spikes. I could only stare, completely lost and intrigued at the sight of Erik. At the sight, as Erik whipped his hands across his body again. At Erik's command, the spikes flew at Malix, slashing and stabbing into his body. They were thin, barely making pencil-sized wounds, and only a few went into his body. The others scraped and scratched at his skin as they flew by. This didn't kill Malix, however. Malix growled loudly before charging at Erik, causing the incubus to step back in slight shock. Malix pointed his gun at Erik, closing the distance between them, and fired as the barrel almost reached Erik's face. Instead of the bullet ripping into Erik, a large explosion forced both away from each other. Malix bounced off the far wall and landed on his knees, groaning in pain. Erik, however, slid across the ground, landing on his stomach. Erik! Malix slowly planted a foot into the ground to stand, but froze before doing so, staring at Erik's body. Erik, on the other hand, slowly rose and turned to face Malix head-on. Erik reached a hand up and wiped off a small stain of blood that had painted the side of his lip before growling almost animalistically. At that moment, something in the air changed. The air instantly went from frantic to still in energy. What could have been described in tone as the color of red quickly turned into a deadly mix of purple and red as everything began to blend together all at once.
How persistent. I guess I'll have to go all out on you to finally rid the world of you.
Was this the extent of demon power? My eyes never strayed from Erik's face, however, even as it changed. His eyes began to glow a bright golden color as Erik began to walk toward Malix.
Let's end this.
Malix aimed his gun and fired at Erik, but the bullet never made its target. As the shot erupted from the barrel, the ethereal tendrils erupted from Erik's back, creating a wing-like barrier from the bullet. Malix stared wide-eyed as Erik's tendrils absorbed the bullet and grew almost larger in size and in number with each step Erik took. You'd think Malix would have figured out by now that the gun's not gonna work. Erik's skin slowly began to morph and shift, changing from human to something else entirely. Something about Erik grew dark and menacing, and this transformation was making him even darker. Before I was allowed to see Erik's new form, however, a pair of hands quickly covered my eyes. Instinctively, I reached up and gripped them, trying to pull them away. A voice stopped me.
It's me. Don't look.
I listened carefully and let the last two words linger in my mind. Don't look. Why? What was being hidden from me? I wanted to know, but something told me to obey Damien's command. I could hear everything, however. I listened as Malix stood up with a pained grunt before being pushed against the wall and another shout. After that came sounds of flesh ripping and blood spurting, followed quickly by Malix's screams. Oh, that sounds pleasant. Maybe it was better that I wasn't able to see.
Erik, enough!
Almost instantly after James's command, the sound stopped. The air grew silent as a pair of footsteps slowly made their way to where we were.
Miss, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in school?
Yeah, about that. I furrowed my eyebrows and stared at Damien, asking him to answer their question through my thoughts.
Diana sent her back here. She invaded her school and sent all the students back home.
What is that bitch up to? Seriously, Diana's playing around for no reason.
I must apologize, Princess. To see you be hunted by both demons and devils, I feel entirely responsible.
Erik, it's not your fault.
No, forgive me, but I can't stand the thought of them hurting you. If we had never come, you'd never be in danger.
I quickly reached over and put my finger on his lips, stopping him from going any further. I didn't want to hear anymore. Erik, It's okay. I wanted to help you out. I offered to let you all stay. Nothing is your fault. I gently moved my hand and cupped Erik's cheek, staring at him with concern. I didn't want him to hold guilt in his mind about this whole ordeal. Diana was desperate, and she'd hunt anyone for them. It wasn't his fault she was desperate enough to hunt them down. However, I was curious. So, Erik, you're a noble. Erik chuckled before he stared at the hand he was caressing with a soft smile.
Yes, I'm a noble. My brothers and I are nobles. Well, I guess I should say were now, shouldn't I?
Were?
James was the demon prince when we lived in the Abyssal Plains. The others and I were simply nobles living in the castle simply because of our bloodline. Should James fail or die, we were the replacements. Well, we didn't want to live like that, as simply replacements over our brother. So we all wanted to leave and be an actual family.
What was it like while you were there?
Well, to put it simply, it was boring. James was constantly being trained while the rest of us had to constantly entertain ourselves without disturbing him. I, however, was also being trained under the guidance of my mother.
Your mother?
Yes, she was a lovely woman. I never knew what she looked like.
That made no sense. How could he not know what his own mother looked like? Erik, as if he read my mind, smiled and chuckled at the confusion on my face.
Our father had multiple wives. James, myself, Sam, and Matthew came from these very women. But tensions grew high when Damien was born outside our father's marriages.
Oh?
In order to quell the tension, our father had a powerful demon mage turn our mothers into simple, floating spirits. They lived, but they could not have physical form.
Well, that's a dick move. That's horrible.
It is, but which is better? A house where the sons of the Demon Lord could have their birth mothers, or watching these very women claw at each other's throats out of jealousy, leaving the sons with no true parental guidance. Our father didn't have time for anyone but James, so the rest of us needed someone to make sure we didn't grow up to be incompetent. She taught me well, at least what she could teach me anyway. That visage became habit, and now it's a natural persona to me. She taught me to always serve and make the women I met happy. She always said that that was the true incubus way.
The true incubus way?
It makes sense, no? If I can please and serve any women I meet, then I can surely convince them to fully give their energy to me.
I began to see the mask Erik was wearing. He wasn't putting on airs because he was overly complimentary. He was complimentary in order to gain trust and respect. That is smart.
It is. However, I know what you're thinking, Princess. I don't blame you for thinking what you are thinking of right now.
Then what am I thinking of right now?
Who am I exactly? If I am truly not as flirtatious as I act, then what do I act like? And will you be the next victim? I can assure you, Princess, that I am no danger to you.
How can I be so sure?
Because, Princess, I don't deserve your trust or energy.
I stared, my mind going blank. What did he mean? Erik lifted my hand again and gently caressed it, staring down at it.
You've done so much for me and my brothers, sheltering us, letting us continue to live here. It may not seem like much, but to a family of brothers without anywhere to go, it means everything. I can't soil your gifts to us by taking anything from you. You've become so important and precious to us, to me. To take anything from you like that would be beyond unforgivable.
I watched in speechless silence as Erik lifted my hand higher and simply laid his lips against it. I could feel his frown and felt his shame burning itself into my skin. It was a painful sight and almost made my eyes water.
I could never do that to you.
Erik lowered my hand and lowered his head, ashamed. I couldn't help but feel my heart squeeze within my chest at the sight. He didn't want to hurt me. He truly cared. My heart stopped. Diana was with Erik. My mind flew into slow motion, playing fake images of Diana trying to seduce Erik in my mind to further fan the angry flame inside of me. What was even worse was the fact that Erik could play into Diana's flirtatious game. I instinctively followed Erik's voice and blushed wildly. I was approaching the bathroom. The door was open just a crack, wide enough to peek in without being noticed. I peeked inside to see Erik by the bathtub, with Diana sitting on the sink, looking to him.
Such a gentleman. You know how to treat a woman.
That I do. However, I'm afraid that my manners will not replace my sickening hatred towards you.
I'm hurt, wounded truly. Is this how you really address a woman?
A woman you may be, but you are an enemy as well.
Pity. And here I thought I was going to offer you the chance to become something better than just a simple incubus.
What was Diana going on about? More than just an incubus? She was insane.
I highly doubt you have anything more than what I can have here in the human world.
How about becoming the next demon lord?
I froze. What did she mean? Becoming the next demon lord? The boys weren't in the demon world anymore. They had no claim to the throne anymore.
Becoming the next demon lord? You're overstepping yourself, don't you think? How can you know about who the throne goes to?
Well, currently, I'm the contracted bride to the heir to the throne. Since the throne is open, it's available to any son of the demon lord's line.
Is that so?
It is. You'll gain the throne, the land, and a bride to continue your lineage with. Doesn't that sound like a perfect life for an incubus like you?
I could feel myself gripping my fists tightly in anger. How dare this girl try to convince Erik to return to the demon world? He ran away from it. He didn't have to go back. He shouldn't go back. My mind began to wander, imagining him saying yes. He would leave, and the brothers would follow to bring him back. They'd be trapped because Diana would make sure they could never leave. Erik would be the new demon lord with Diana as his queen, and I'd lose him.
Sorry, but that actually doesn't sound appeasing at all.
What?
I felt surprise run down my body again. Did I hear Erik correctly? He denied her?
You dare deny?
Do not try to raise a tone to me. I am not as submissive as my training defines.
I could see the ethereal tendrils slowly form around Erik, taunting and threatening to strike at Diana.
You do not scare me. I can bring you to your knees and make you beg to return with me.
Such a cute bluff. You don't have enough power to do that, do you? Or else you would have already done it.
Erik smirked before making the tendrils fade away. Diana gripped the sink beneath her as Erik turned to adjust the shower head nonchalantly.
Besides, even if you did enthrall me, you wouldn't fully own me. I belong to her.
The human girl? You must be joking. A human like her can't possibly provide you what you need. She is a human. You're a demon.
I felt the urge to storm in and shut her mouth. I would give away my position, but I was growing extremely tired of Diana. I'm gonna barge right in. I decided to be assertive and quickly stepped into the room, throwing the door to the bathroom wide open. Diana and Erik looked at me in surprise as I glared daggers at Diana. Get out.
Well, well, little human. You're awfully nosy in business that doesn't concern you.
Pretty sure this does concern me. It does concern me.
Does it? I don't think a human would understand the importance of this affair.
You're asking him to leave to be someone he doesn't want to be. It's not going to happen.
Oh? And what makes you so sure about that?
I love him. Diana stared in shock at my explanation. Was it not what she expected? I didn't care what she expected. I wasn't going to lose the man I had grown to love.
You love him?
Yes, I love him. Diana's lips twitched, the edges curling into an amused smirk as she stared at me.
So what? A human's love isn't enough to understand the situation. A demon can never reciprocate human feeling.
To both of our surprise, however, Erik stepped forward and put an arm around me, pulling me close to his body.
I love her.
I saw the confidence Diana had shatter in her eyes as she stared at Erik and at his words. I could see the struggle in her face to try and find some weakness in Erik, in me, in anything.
A demon love a human. Impossible.
Impossible? How utterly dim to think that. We are the masters of emotion. We aren't barred away from feeling love. In fact, we can experience it 10 times more powerfully than humans. I love her with every single part of my being. However, I don't expect someone like you to understand love.
Diana took a step back, physically feeling the sting of Erik's words in her chest. I had lost. She had lost. I could see it in her eyes. Diana's eyes grew dull as she glared at me and Erik. It seemed almost uncharacteristic of her, yet it was something I wasn't surprised to see come to her face.
Very well. Fine. Valet.
And with that, Diana faded into the ground into the purple pentagram, crossing her arms and almost looking upset. Erik and I were left alone, left with silence in the room. I finally let out the air I was unconsciously holding in my chest, relaxing from the ordeal. Erik stepped to me and held me gently, surprising me.
Are you okay, princess?
I nodded in response, unable to speak so immediately after being surprised. Erik let out a sigh, relaxing the embrace. I gently placed my hands around him, returning the embrace slightly. I could hear Erik's heartbeat. He held me close in his arms, and I felt safe beyond words.
My sweet princess. How you've captured my heart.
I looked up at Erik, wondering what he meant by what he said. Erik smiled down at me, moving a strand of my hair from my face to look down at me.
I'm selfish, ignorant, and undeserving of everything you have done and given to me. The way you accept me and see through my mask astounds me beyond words. And now, you've captured my heart and claimed it as yours to probably the greatest adversary in the abyssal plains. You've made a demon fall in love with you. I've fallen in love with you and want to give you everything you deserve.
I stared, wide-eyed, blushing like a maniac. Was this real? No way, this couldn't be real. Was Erik confessing to me? Confessing his love for me? Erik gently smiled and caressed my cheek. The warmth of his hand invited me to nuzzle into it, and I closed my eyes. This wasn't a dream. My heart was pounding hard enough where I was sure Erik could hear it. Erik gently leaned in, closing his eyes. He stopped, however, remaining just a mere tortuous inch away from my lips. He wanted me to show my feelings for him. He had left himself open for me to kiss or leave him empty. The power I had was unbelievable. Kiss him! I loved him and wanted to give him exactly what he wanted. I gently leaned in, letting my lips finally touch his gingerly. Erik let out almost a pleasurable purr against my lips before wrapping both of his arms around my waist, pulling me close to him. I moved my arms up and around his neck, feeling the kiss between us deepen to a heated height. My chest was pounding, making me feel and see fireworks in my mind. Erik was everything I desired. He was the man I wanted, demon or not. It was also supernatural to fall in love with someone so quickly. Maybe it was the sense of magic I was thrown into. Maybe it was Cupid playing with my heart. Either way, I found myself melting at the thought of him being with me. I found myself combing my fingers through Erik's hair, making the man holding me softly tremble at my touch. He gently nibbled on my lower lip, asking me to deepen the kiss between us even further. I easily teased him before finally opening my mouth slightly for him. His tongue gently danced with mine as one of his hands slid up my back and cradled my head. He gently leaned my body back, making me cling to him as the heat of our kiss rose higher and higher. Gently, though, Erik slowed the kiss down and pulled away, staring down at me. His eyes burned for me, wanted me to melt and buckle in his arms. I could feel myself melt already. Erik opened his mouth to speak, but as a very small blush ran along his cheeks, he was reduced to a shy silence. I stared as he tried to find the words to say in my eyes. I knew exactly what he wanted. He didn't need energy, though, right? Are you?
No, I just...
I stared wide-eyed, feeling blush on my cheeks grow. He didn't say anything more, but I knew what words would have followed if he'd continued. He wanted me. I was stunned. Was I that appealing to him? Was his passion really that deep for me? Erik gently nuzzled my forehead, losing the blush and finally being able to speak, a small chuckle escaping his lips.
If you don't want to, you don't have to. I do have to shower after all, and you need your rest.
I could feel my mind go numb and purr at the idea. A moment with an incubus. He was a demon of sex, the purest form of lust and desire. My world would rock and I would enjoy every second of it. Especially because this character is a virgin. At the same time, I was indeed inexperienced. Diana wasn't wrong when she claimed me to be innocent. Did I want to give that innocence to him, especially this early? I found myself forgetting the words yes and no. What could I say to him? I knew then what I wanted, but how to say it without breaking the moment? Oh, well, I know my viewers are perverted, so I'm clicking Seduce Me. I couldn't believe the two words that came out of my mouth. It made the most sense to tell him yes. And I needed him. I wanted him. Those two words must have made something in him finally break. Erik simply ran his fingers down his vest and shirt, releasing the buttons and revealing his bare chest to me. I couldn't help but move one of my hands down his chest, running my fingers over the crevices of his muscles. A pleasured purr escaped his throat, making me shiver slightly. Erik let his vest and shirt slide down his arms to the floor before cradling my head in his hands and kissing me deeply. I felt the heat rise in my body, making me undo the tie underneath my collar and release the buttons on my own shirt. I would join him for a shower, then we'd head to bed together. Quickly, I removed my shirt and vest, making Erik stop kissing me and stare in slight surprise. I was simply in a bra, but I could feel a blush invade my cheeks. My shy side began to fester in my mind. Did I really want this? To undress before a demon? No, this was the man I loved, and yet I felt my innocence drape over me like an almost shame. As if he knew, Erik gently caressed my cheek, smiling at me before kissing each cheek and whispering in my ear.
You're beautiful.
These two words broke my limitation. I gave in, and I yielded to my desires. Before I knew it, he and I were both stripped of clothing and in the very nice warm shower together. The heat between our bodies simply added to the warmth, making the shower a very steamy one. Erik pulled me close, knowing I was still shy, and began to kiss my lips over and over. Each kiss was his promise to keep me safe, keep me comfortable, and love me. I kept my arms wrapped around Erik, taking each kiss he gave me and giving him my own kisses in return. I didn't know if it was the fact that we were both naked, or maybe I just craved his touch, but I didn't want to let him go. The water ran over our bodies, cleansing our skin as we held on to each other like it was the end of the world. Even when Erik started to actually wash his body and mine, our bodies constantly touched. The fragrance of the soap engraved itself into my memory as I let him touch me and clean me. He was gentle and sweet, making sure to be attentive to every part of me. However, as he held me, I could slightly feel the shiver of his hands. He was nervous? Was I his first? He wasn't going to show it. He wanted me to enjoy this moment, but was afraid of screwing up. His shivering hands showed me his emotions perfectly. Then my mind quickly made a realization. We were really going to join in the shower? I had imagined my first time in a bed. I eventually pulled away from him after the last bit of soap was rinsed away from my skin. He looked at me, worried, but I smiled. Not here. Erik stared for a brief moment before slightly smirking and nodding, gathering me back into his arms and kissing me. I felt warm magic gather around our bodies as the slight pattern of the running water vanished. I slightly opened my eyes to see that Erik and I were no longer in the shower, but in my bedroom. We were both dry, and the heat and passion remained. Erik guided me to the bed as a purple tendril made sure my door was closed and locked. As he laid me down and knelt over me, Erik smiled and finally embraced me as we both desired. The pleasure between us would be heavenly, and we'd go through it together. I closed my eyes and gave myself to Erik. Woohoo! My body, my mind, my soul, it all belonged to him as he held me. His body, his mind, his soul, it all belonged to me as I gave into his embrace. His kisses and fingers over my skin would forever engrave themselves into my memory as our passion rose through the incredible heights. Our breaths and moans to each other equally sounded and echoed like blissful chant we never wished to end. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Damien. Oh, I'm so sorry you're hearing all of this. We kept moving, loving, feeling every inch of our bodies until we had had enough and I was enveloped in his embrace. Skin to skin, heartbeats matching, we held each other in the glow of the aftermath. I nestled my head under Erik's chin as he held me close.
I love you so much.
I love you too. Just to hear those words come from Erik's mouth made my heart flutter. To hear me answer made my soul warm in glee. I could feel both of us sink into a peaceful sleep together. It was the best sleep I had had in days, and I was happy. I had my love, and I had my happiness. My life was simply perfect. When I opened my eyes, I found myself staring into Erik's bare chest. I blushed and looked up to see Erik still sleeping. His sleeping face made me giggle softly, but the reality of the situation made my heart flutter. I couldn't believe it. I was lying next to a man I had grown to love with all of my heart. His warm embrace made me feel safe as the tender moment we just shared replayed in my mind. I couldn't help but smile and snuggle into his chest further. Unconsciously, he held me tighter to his body, giving me more of his warmth. I didn't want to move, but then my core suddenly tightened and made me sit up without waking the man next to me. I felt my legs move and bring me to my balcony window, where I opened the glass and stepped out onto the patio. Are you still naked? Oh! I stared wide-eyed at Diana, who sat cross-legged on the railing of my balcony with her glowing red eyes staring upon me. I opened my mouth to object, but Diana stopped me.
Before you get all huffy, I didn't come here to take your precious man away. By the way, how was it exactly? Demons are the best lovers, after all.
I glared. What do you want, Diana?
Well, I just wanted to see how you truly feel. You know, without him around to influence you.
What are you talking about?
I'm giving you an opportunity to come clean about these feelings of yours and to give you your salvation.
What was Diana up to? This was beyond crazy. Nothing she had done made sense. Why was I still alive at this rate? What's keeping you from killing me and taking them?
You are not worth my time.
Not worth your time? What are you? Afraid something might happen? All at once, I felt my body lifted into the air and moved over past the railings, leaving me with nothing but ground below to threaten me with collision death.
Oh, trust me, dear. I'm not afraid to kill you.
Got it!
I can drop you right now and leave your body to rot until the morning, when the boys would find you.
I wanted to speak, but the thought of her letting go and letting me fall to my death scared my voice into silence. Diana then chuckled and wheeled my body back to the balcony, setting me down gently.
Alas, if I kill you, then the boys would never come with me willingly back to the demon world, and then I'd have to chase them all around the world, or kill them and drag them back. But then their father wouldn't be happy, and blah blah blah.
Too much work. Fair enough. Diana seemed very business-oriented, as if the boys were cargo more than men. It irked me, but she then smiled.
I'm giving you one chance to denounce your love for the demon in your bed, and let me take him and the other boys back to the demon world.
And why, may I ask, would I do that?
There are so many reasons why, actually. There's the reason that he's a demon and you're a human, so you two can never truly have a happily ever after. Then there's the reason that demons truly do not know how to love, despite what he may proclaim. The list goes on and on. The point is, if you give me the boys, I will promise you eternal happiness.
Eternal happiness.
That's right. I have the power to give you anything you desire. Power, men, women, money, fame. Name it, and it's yours. A demon never goes back on their word, and I have the power to obtain anything you wish. Our deal is our contract.
I could only stare in shock. This was a dream. It had to be. However, Diana smiled, an almost genuine smile to me, shaking me to the reality of the situation. She would never smile like that.
Don't you wish to be free of your destiny? Your father constantly berating you to become the next CEO of your grandfather's company.
How did you... I was almost floored in surprise. How did Diana know all of this? She was a succubus, yes, but how could she know anything beyond sexual desire? She wasn't Damien. Diana chuckled and leaned back against her arms.
Just because I play with hearts and sex doesn't mean I don't know my way around the human mind. You happen to be an open book of information, but I digress. I can give you your freedom with ease. It'll be like you were always meant to have it. All I ask is that you hand over the boys. What do you say?
Was I seriously being given this choice? The man I loved for anything I wanted? A demon like Diana was powerful enough, yes, but did I even want to consider giving up the man I loved? No. She must have been crazier than I thought, I glared. Absolutely not. Diana sighed and stood up onto the railing. What I wasn't expecting was her lifting me into the air. I tried to scream, but my voice suddenly became locked in silence. What was Diana doing? Diana made me float over to her, and she smirked as we touched noses.
Well, if I can't return home with the boys, I might as well return home with the power to fight back.
Diana finally leaned in and kissed me. I shut my eyes, feeling the need to bite her lips, but finding no muscles in my face listening to my mental commands. What did she do to me? I didn't want to enjoy it, but every single nerve in my body was flaring in excitement and pleasure as she kissed me. I felt my energy drain slowly but forcefully from my body. Was she using her magic to force energy out of my body? It seemed like forever, but finally Diana pulled away from the kiss with a smile and a lick of her lips. She lowered me back onto the patio and chuckled. For some reason, even though nothing seemed to have changed, she looked stronger, powerful. It was almost like looking at a new Diana. Diana then stepped back off of the railing, making me catch my breath in my throat. As she took another step away from me, she looked to be simply walking on the night air. Diana smirked at my sudden surprise.
May you never regret your choice, human. If you do, I'll happily come and take it away.
With a flick of her hair, Diana turned and walked away into the night, fading into the darkness like a shadow. I watched her fade away before looking back to the man in my bed. Did I make the right choice? My heart gave a gentle thump, giving me my answer. I did, and I will never regret it for as long as I live. One evening, a good couple of years after the boys and I had met, I had a moment to myself. So I wandered the house and took in all that had happened as if it was all a dream. The demons, the devils, the magic, it all was surreal to believe. It almost frightened me to think that it could have all been a dream. But the warm feeling in my heart reminded me that it was all real. The demons, the magic, the love I had, all real. I smiled as I held my hands to my chest, relishing in the feelings dancing within my soul. I let out a happy sigh before looking up and seeing where I had wandered to. I was standing at the entrance of the backyard, and the door was slightly ajar. I peeked out to see Erik standing out at the gazebo, looking up at the moon in the sky. I slowly opened the door and exited the house, walking towards the man who held my heart. Hearing the grass beneath my feet, Erik turned his head and smiled at me.
Good evening, princess.
I smiled and blushed a bit, moving to stand at Erik's side. What are you doing out here?
I'm merely making friends with the moon, my love.
I blushed deeper. Hearing him call me his love made my heart skip a beat. Erik chuckled, most likely being able to see the blush through the darkness of the night.
I wanted to see the night sky. The yard is one of the more perfect places to stargaze. Don't you agree?
Yeah. I found myself staring up at the sky as well. The stars glimmered in the dark blue, almost pitch-black sky. They all seemed to cast an entrancing spell on my eyes, not letting me look away. Not that I cared, anyway. Erik gently wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close to him without breaking my stare at the sky.
I don't deserve you, you know.
I raised an eyebrow and looked to Erik, confused. What did he mean? Erik simply stared at the sky, holding me gently to him.
You're much too wonderful to be loving a demon such as myself. As cliché as it may be, the beauty fell in love with a beast. A beast with an insatiable hunger for lust.
But you're not a beast, Erik. Erik looked down at me in slight surprise. I turned my body to him and gently held his cheek in my hand, feeling him nuzzle gently into it and cradle it with his own hand. You're not a beast, nor will you ever be. You're Erik, and you're the man I want to love for the rest of my life. Demon or not, I love you. Erik stared, looking lost at what to say to my words. It was all true, though. He had faults, sure, but who didn't? I enjoyed his company and adored every part of his personality. The mask he wore would slowly fade over time. Or maybe not. After all, his mask is part of who I fell in love with. Erik gently moved his head and kissed my palm, closing his eyes and absorbing what I had said. He gently opened his eyes partially, staring past my hand.
Sometimes I forget that you're human. You entranced me better than any demon could. You're truly unbelievable. Are you real, or am I dreaming?
Yes, Erik, I'm real. I'm right here. Erik finally looked to me, a look of desperate need in his eyes. You're not dreaming. I gently guided Erik's face down with my hand and kissed him softly, reminding him of my touch and reaffirming my words. He stared at me as if his greatest wish had come true. I fought back a giggle at the sight. Erik gently pulled me to him, facing me to hug me to his chest. I nuzzled into his chest, hearing his gentle heartbeat and memorizing its tempo.
You'll regret it, I promise you. You'll regret loving someone like me.
You underestimate me. Erik chuckled softly, the sound of his laughter sending happy waves down my spine. Erik smiled down at me and kissed the top of my head. My focus, however, traveled down to my hand, which had become gently held by Erik's. His thumb grazed over my ring finger, where I could feel soft veins of energy tingling on my skin. I watched as, around my ring finger, a small vine wrapped itself around and tied itself into a lovely ring. The ring held a beautiful purple flower with a red gem in the middle, glistening in the moonlight. I gasped before looking up to Erik, who slightly smirked down at me.
See? I'm taking advantage of you already.
Erik! Erik gently moved his hand and cradled my cheek, replacing the smirk on his face with a tender smile that made my heart skip a beat.
I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I swear to love you till the end of days and beyond. You make me feel so complete. I can no longer imagine what I would do in life without you. Let me stay with you. I love you so much.
I felt my heart going a million miles an hour. Was this truly happening? Yes, it was. I felt it. I knew it. Out of pure happiness, I wrapped my arms around Erik and kissed him deeply. Erik stared before holding me to him and kissing me deeply back, pouring all of his love to me into that kiss. I did the same for him, not wanting to wake up if this was indeed a dream. I felt light as a feather, not wanting to ever let go of the man in my arms. There were no words that could describe the emotions within me. I felt joy, happiness, ecstatic, high, all at once. Here I was, kissing the man I would be with forever, under the beautiful moonlight of the sky. I had gained the heart of a demon, no, of a man I loved. I vowed to cherish him and love him for the remainder of my days and beyond. Could a demon love a human forever? I knew Erik would. And that was my happily ever after. It had been 2 years since he passed away. My visits to his grave became fewer as time went on, but no one could tell me that I stopped. I tried to visit him whenever it was sunny, so bad weather wouldn't bring down my mood. It was better to not be sad when I came by. Today, though, was an incredibly happy day. I was so full of emotion I couldn't help but visit his gravestone. I wondered, what would Grandfather think of me? After all, I was about to marry a demon. I was about to marry the man of my dreams, and I had stopped before going to the wedding venue to talk with my grandfather. Pretty sure I looked odd in that cemetery, donning a wedding dress. However, I didn't mind. I needed to come regardless. I stood by the grave, staring down at it with a smile. I'm getting married today, Grandpa. The wind gently danced around me, as if my grandfather ushered it to reply. I grew a brighter smile and let out a sigh. I couldn't lie, I wanted my grandfather to be at my wedding, but I couldn't go back in time. Even if I was able to, how could I have stopped him from dying? I shook my head. I didn't want to think of that, not on the day of my wedding. I hope you'll be there in spirit, Grandpa. I'm sure you'll... Before I could continue my sentence, the sky suddenly became dark, causing me to look up. Rain began to fall and patter against the stone and grass as a haunting bell began to chime. What boggled my mind was the fact that the rain was avoiding my body. It was like I was in a safe circle underneath an invisible umbrella, so the rain couldn't soak me or my dress. What the? Was this grandfather's doing? Why was it raining all of a sudden? The rain became heavy, and I didn't dare move from my spot, afraid of what would happen if I moved from it. I looked to the grave, confused and concerned. My eyes locked onto the grave. This wasn't a natural storm. Magic was at work here. My heart gave a gentle thud in reply to my conclusion, but the word magic reverberated in my mind. Magic. I looked down and lifted my hands to scan over my gloved palms. My fingers began to tingle, almost as if that single word had unlocked something. Magic. I gently pinched the edge of one glove with 2 fingers and slid it off, revealing my bare hand. Nothing had changed, but I could feel that something was different. I could faintly feel energy zipping through the nerves under the skin, dancing in excitement at the word magic. I wonder... I knew Diana took away my energy and my magic before she left, but what if? What if I still had some left? I raised my hand to the sky and focused on the back of my hand. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to see something. My mind quickly formed a word in my mind. I didn't know where it came from, but I let the word escape my lips as a soft whisper. Destino. As soon as the sound of that word faded into the air, the rain around me suddenly froze as if time had stopped. The wind was still slightly blowing, but the rain had stopped. I slowly lowered my hand and looked around. Did I really do this? Before I could move again, the raindrops and the stormy clouds above began to fade away, returning the day to the sunny weather it had been before. I looked around and noticed that the grass and the gravestones were all dry, as if the rain didn't even fall in the first place. That was...
I knew it! I knew it! That girl has demon magic.
What the...
Then quit talking and let's take her!
Ah, shit.
The demon lord will be so pleased.
Dip, dip, potato chip! Who? Before I could turn to search for voices, I felt hands grab hold of my feet, making me look down and lift my dress. 2 pairs of evil-looking hands had taken hold of my ankles, reaching through the dark red and purple pentagram. I shrieked, trying to pull my legs away, but I couldn't stop them from swiftly pulling me into the ground. I was pulled deeper into the darkness. I was no longer in my world. I was being dragged through a dark void, one that I couldn't escape. I reached and clawed at the dark, trying to find something to grab to. I tried to pull my legs out of their grasp but holding them, but couldn't pull free. What was going on? Why was this happening? Someone help me! As if someone had heard my screams, I suddenly felt hands let go and disappear, leaving me to float in the darkness they left me in. I shut my eyes. Please let this be a dream. Please let this be a dream. I finally felt a surface under my feet and collapsed onto it, curled over my body from the experience I had. I didn't dare tear my eyes away from my lap, not ready to get up just yet. The voice I then heard, however, made my heart stop.
You. What are you doing here?
Diana. To be continued. Well, that sucks. Coming soon, Seduce Me 2, The Demon War. Okay, so that was the ending I had wanted, and I'm excited about it because I loved it. It was beautiful. I don't know. I don't have words right now. That took me 2.5 hours. So, this is going to be fun to edit. So yeah, I'm logging off now. I'll see you guys later. And remember to do something nice for a stranger today. You may just save a life.